On the morning of September 11th, I was supposed to be on the subway that passed directly beneath the Twin Towers, but I overslept and woke up alive, with the television showing people running, buildings collapsing, and one phrase being repeated on every channel, Allahu Akbar. That day, I associated those words with death, with fear, with chaos. What I didn't know is that years later, that same phrase would be on my lips, not as a war cry, but as a declaration of faith. My name is Naima Gonzalez. I'm 27 years old, born in Mexico into a devout Catholic family, marked by devotion to the Virgin of Guadalupe and the traditions of my grandmother. Today, I live in the United States, where my life was completely transformed after an unexpected encounter with what I had feared for years, Islam. Before I continue with this testimony, write in the comments where you're watching this video from. I want to know how far this message is reaching, because maybe, just like me, you're also searching for answers in the middle of chaos, and you have no idea that the truth may be exactly where the world tells you not to look. It all started the day I almost died, without even leaving the house. I had planned to take the subway around 6:30 in the morning, the same train that passed beneath the Twin Towers, but out of pure exhaustion, I fell asleep on the couch. When I woke up, the TV showed one of the towers on fire, and the whole world in shock. What impacted me most wasn't just the horror, but the way every channel kept repeating, Islamic terrorism, Muslims, Allahu Akbar. I had never heard that phrase before, but in just a few minutes it was associated, in my mind, with tragedy. As a Latina, a Catholic, a naturalized American, something inside me revolted. But along with the outrage, a silent question was born. Who are these people? Who is this Allah? And why did my heart, even afraid, want to understand instead of hate? In the days following 9/11, my home became a field of panic. The TV was on all the time. My family called every hour begging me to leave New York, offering to buy a ticket, crying, pleading. But inside me, there was something stronger than fear. It was a restlessness, a need to understand why it happened, and why Allahu Akbar was being treated as if it were a curse. I researched everything I could. I searched websites, forums, videos, and the more I read, the more I realized there was a gap between what was said about Islam and what Islam actually seemed to teach. I found out there was a mosque not far from there, in the next neighborhood. It wasn't big, it wasn't luxurious, but it was open. I still remember the feeling of typing the address into the GPS. My finger trembled. My heart beat faster than it had when I heard the first news report on the day of the attack. I grabbed any scarf I could find, very simple, and tied it around my head awkwardly. I put on a modest coat, even though it was hot. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, Assalamu alaikum. It sounded strange, but also familiar, as if a part of me somehow knew that sound from a very ancient place. On the way to the mosque, I felt as though I was crossing an invisible border. I didn't know what I was going to find. I was afraid of being rejected, of being questioned, of doing something wrong. But at the same time, something stronger pulled me forward. It wasn't just curiosity. It was thirst for truth. It was hunger for meaning. I wasn't looking for a religion. I was looking for answers. And without realizing it, I was walking in the direction of God. The front of the mosque was simple, almost too discreet for someone expecting something grand. I took a deep breath, put my hand on the doorknob, and entered. The silence inside was different. It wasn't empty. It was welcoming. An older man with a white beard, dressed in light clothing, saw me and walked over with a calm smile. He said, "You're welcome here. Make yourself at home." In that instant, something inside me let go. He led me to the office and asked, "Are you Muslim?" Nervously, I played with the edge of my improvised scarf and answered, "No." He smiled again and said, "Then feel free to take it off if you want. No one here will force you to do anything." That gesture broke me. I expected judgment, interrogation, pressure, but what I found was respect. I was invited to attend a class. It was a Wednesday night. I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough to know there was something pure there. I went back the next week, and the week after that, and the one after. I started recognizing faces, laughing with the sisters who arrived late like me. I learned that punctuality in Islam is a virtue, and that manners are a spiritual duty. I made friends with women from Indonesia, Malaysia, Egypt, women with stories different from mine, but with a peace I silently envied. And then came the questions. Are you already Muslim? Do you want to learn how to pray with us? I'd say, not yet, but I'm listening. Because that's what I was doing. I was listening to what I had never been taught about God, about one God, without images, without intercessors, a God who hears directly, who responds without intermediaries, who forgives without complicated rituals. Little by little, that place stopped feeling strange. It stopped being the mosque, and it became a home I never knew existed, a place where my soul, for the first time, didn't feel in conflict with my mind. The first time I wore a proper hijab was almost by accident. A friend from the mosque gifted me a delicate floral scarf and said, "This suits you." I put it on with care, not knowing that such a small gesture would cause an earthquake in my family. I took a photo, posted it on social media, and in less than an hour, my cousin called me furious. "What is this? You're not Arab. Take that off now." She showed up at my house, face red with rage. She grabbed my arm, ripped the hijab off my head, and slapped me. I trembled, but I took a deep breath, held her hand, and asked, "Do you think Jesus would approve of this? Do you think he would be happy seeing you hit me for wearing a veil?" She went silent. Then she screamed, "Get out, I don't want to see you again." I left with tears in my eyes, but peace in my heart, because at that moment I realized something. The problem wasn't the veil. The problem was the fear of what it represented: change, faith, surrender. And that's when the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe came to my mind, with her blue and gold mantle, always covered, always pure. My grandmother also wore a veil to go to church. The nuns I admired as a child also covered their heads as a sign of reverence. So why is it that when a Muslim woman does the same, it's seen as oppression? The hijab didn't erase me. It revealed me. It was the first time in my life I felt my body wasn't being judged, sold, or exposed. For the first time, I chose who could see me and why, and that to me was liberating. What others saw as a symbol of imprisonment became, for me, a symbol of dignity. For months I did everything except call myself Muslim. I fasted during Ramadan, attended the Wednesday night classes, participated in mosque events, learned Arabic phrases, memorized small surahs from the Quran. But when people asked, "Are you Muslim yet?" I hesitated, not because I doubted the faith, but because deep down I still carried the fear of rejection from my family, from society, and maybe even from myself. Until one day, at the end of Ramadan, a sister gently touched my shoulder and said, "Today is the last day. Why are you still postponing what your heart has already decided?" That question felt like a mirror, because yes, my heart had already surrendered. All that was left was for my mouth to confirm what my soul already knew. I called the sheikh. I sat in front of him with trembling hands, and with a shaky voice I declared, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah." I bear witness that there is no deity but God, and that Muhammad is his messenger. In that moment, I felt like something invisible had been lifted off my shoulders, a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. It was as if all the pieces had finally come together. I no longer had to explain. I no longer had to justify. I was me, and now, with faith, I went home alone that night. I took the prayer mat I had been given as a gift and made sujood, still unsure of how to properly pray. And there, with my forehead on the ground, I cried like a child, because for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was and who I lived for. My shahada wasn't just a conversion. It was a reunion with the truth I had always searched for, and that, deep down, had always been calling me. Returning to Mexico after my conversion felt like walking into a storm with my eyes wide open. I was no longer the same. I wore abaya, hijab every day, spoke less, and reflected more. To me, it felt natural, but to my family, it was a scandal. Right when I arrived, my cousin, the same one who had been like a sister to me, looked at me as if I were a stranger. "You're covered up to your neck? It's summer. Are you crazy?" I tried to explain, calmly, that I dressed this way now out of faith, that I wasn't doing it to shock anyone, but out of love for God. But she didn't want to hear it. One night, toward the end of the trip, she grabbed my arm, ripped the hijab off my head, and slapped me. "You're not Arab. You never will be. Stop acting like one." In that moment, my eyes filled with tears, but my voice came out steady. "Would Jesus be happy to see you hitting me like this?" She froze for a second. Then she shouted, "Get out! I don't want to see you again." And she kicked me out. In that moment, I realized my faith would come at a cost, but that even so, it was worth every pain. Because now, I knew what I believed. I knew why I lived, and no one could take that from me. Some relatives ignored me for the rest of the visit. Others made jokes. But what hurt most was my mother's silence. She didn't argue. She didn't comment. She just looked at me from afar, like someone who no longer recognized her daughter. It was in that silence that I understood. Accepting spiritual truth is easy when the world applauds you. What's hard is holding firm when the ones you love turn their backs. But I held on, because my faith wasn't born from other people's acceptance. It was born in the moment God spared me from death and gave me a new life. If someone had told me that my mother, the same one who couldn't even say the word Islam, would one day accept the same God I did, I would have laughed, because she was the most distant, the quietest, and at the same time, the one who hurt me the most. After my conversion, she looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. She didn't ask questions, didn't argue, but she didn't hug me either. She just watched and silently judged. Then one day, something changed. An interview I gave aired on a Hispanic channel. It was simple, just a conversation about my journey, where I talked about the hijab, the Quran, and what I had found in the Islamic faith. When the video made the rounds, someone in the family sent it to her, and then the phone rang. On the other end of the line, my mom didn't yell. She didn't complain. She just said, "You look like a clown with that cloth on your head. Is this really serious?" I took a deep breath and answered firmly, "Yes, Mama, it's serious." She hung up without another word. I was shattered. I thought that was the final break. But a week later, an envelope arrived at her house. Inside, I placed a copy of the Quran in Spanish, some pamphlets about Islam, and a handwritten letter saying, "You don't have to agree with me. Just read." She didn't reply. But weeks later, I got an unexpected phone call. Her voice was calm, almost emotional. She said, "Daughter, today I said it. That phrase you repeated in that video." I went silent. "I said the Shahada," she continued. "I think now I understand why you changed." I cried like never before. The woman who resisted the most was the one who surrendered the deepest. And in that moment, Allah showed me that no seed planted with sincerity is ever in vain. Sometimes the one who rejects the most is the one searching the hardest. In 2018, Allah gifted me with something I never imagined, even in my greatest dreams, the chance to perform Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage. And I didn't go alone. I took my son with me. Seeing the Kaaba for the first time felt like seeing the beating heart of the faith that already lived inside me. Hundreds of thousands of people, all moving in the same rhythm, with one voice. But nothing prepared me for what I experienced that day. We were performing tawaf, circling the Kaaba. It was intense, packed, the heat thick in the air, and people pressed together like human waves. My son, excited, said, "Let's try to touch the Kaaba, Mom." I smiled and went with him, until everything started spinning. The air felt thin. My chest tightened. The crowd closed in, and my vision darkened. I thought I was going to faint. "Andrew," I cried, trying to hold on. I thought that might be the end. But then, something completely unexplainable happened. A man in white clothing, with a serene face and astonishing strength, appeared out of nowhere. He grabbed my son's hand, then mine, and the crowd parted. Yes, just like the sea split in two for the prophet Moses. We passed through safely, in seconds. When I came to and looked around to thank him, he was gone. I asked everyone nearby. No one knew who he was. No one had seen him. Only the two of us had. My son said, "I think it was an angel, Mom." And with my heart racing, I didn't doubt it for a second. In that moment, I understood something profound. Allah not only guides us, He protects us in the most impossible moments. Hajj taught me that even in the chaos, there is care. Even in the crowd, He sees you. He reaches you. And just when you think you're about to fall, He opens a way. One of the biggest lies I heard after converting was, "Now you have to become Arab." As if accepting Islam meant abandoning my origins, my food, my language, even my name. And for a while that confused me, because I loved my culture. I loved being Mexican. I loved my roots, my music, my words, my heritage. But as I studied more deeply, I discovered Islam doesn't erase your identity. It purifies it. It doesn't require you to change your name unless it has a bad meaning. I could still be Naima Gonzalez. I could still cook mole, make tacos and enchiladas, and even dance with my grandma at family gatherings, as long as it was within what is respectful and pure. I remember one defining moment. I was invited to a gathering where an American sister was going to make her shahada. She had planned it for December 25th because to her it symbolized rebirth. Her family was there, emotional. But during the celebration, her future father-in-law stood up and said, "From today on, your name is Dua." She froze. Her eyes showed discomfort, but she didn't know what to say. I walked over, held her hand and said, "Your name is yours. Allah knows your heart before your name. You can be Muslim and still be yourself." She hugged me, relieved. It was in that moment that I realized the pressure doesn't always come from religion. It comes from people, and we need to know the difference. Today, I continue celebrating my culture with pride. I speak Spanish with my family, teach my son about our traditions, and explain that we don't need to erase the past to live the present with faith. Islam didn't take Mexico away from me. It simply gave me a map to find my place in the world, with God at the center and my roots intact. If you've made it this far, know that this story isn't about me. It's about everyone who was ever taught to fear what they didn't understand. It's about those who grew up hearing that Allahu Akbar was a cry of terror, and one day discovered it's actually a declaration of love for the Creator. My journey started with fear, walked through the fire of prejudice, and faced the pain of rejection. But it ended in peace, because Islam didn't take me away from who I am. It brought me back to what I had always been searching for, the truth. If this story touched you in any way, share it with someone. Someone who is quiet, wondering if there's something greater out there. Someone who might be one question away from discovering faith. Send this video in your family group chats, on WhatsApp, in your Instagram stories. You never know who might be praying for a sign, and maybe this testimony is exactly what they need to hear.